A random girl wanders into a random bookstore in Manhattan on a random Tuesday. She is a normal girl by all accounts, pretty but not too pretty, well-dressed, likely well-educated, maybe a grad student. Someone you might like to strike up a conversation with if you saw her in your bookstore. Joe Goldberg certainly thinks so. Throughout the first season of You, we follow Joe's, let's call it, pursuit of this girl. Initially, they kind of hit it off, they flirt under the guise of their taste in literature, they poke fun about other customers, they're clearly into each other. But notably, they don't exchange contact info. Though, Joe does have her full name.
Guinevere?
Everyone just calls me Beck.
And then nothing bad happens and they end up together happily ever after. If only. Joe goes full stalker, which you should never do. Looking up someone on social media is 1/4 stalker. We've all been there. No. Joe here not only looks up her socials, he starts piecing shit together. Family members, college attended, previous boyfriends. This is now half stalker. But look. Reverse Google image search. Oh shit, that's her address. He's in her apartment now. 3/4 stalker. All we're missing is, yep, there it is. He's stealing her underwear. Full stalker. This is all in the first episode, by the way. Having completed his evolution, Joe actually stalks her, and using what I can only describe as evil mastermind Riz, he manipulates her life in subtle ways in an attempt to get her to fall in love with him. It's fascinating to watch, and while you don't necessarily root for him, you can't help but lean in and think, is he actually going to pull this off? And through the entire series, this outlandish behavior only gets worse and evolves into, well, we won't go into details about what he does just yet to respect spoilers, but let's just say, But what's absolutely fascinating about You isn't the show itself, because yeah, the show has its flaws. Sitting at 5 seasons is probably 2 seasons too long. There are some conveniences in the plot to keep things going. The writing is hit or miss. But ultimately, thanks to some incredible acting on the part of Penn Badgley and a few others, this show manages to be embarrassingly entertaining. Like, embarrassing for you as you watch it because you shouldn't be enjoying it, but you are. And in fact, many people enjoy it in a completely different way. This is what we are here to discuss today. Joe Goldberg is a villain. This man is indefensibly evil, and if you've seen the show, you will co-sign that statement. He is scum of the earth, a parasite, a stain that can't be bleached out of the people he interacts with, and yet we watch him. We root for him. Many of us lust over him because of these things. And this is what I want to talk about today, because the same could be argued of Makima in Chainsaw Man. The same could be argued of Daemon Targaryen in House of the Dragon, Morant in Mass Effect, Virgil in DMC, Monica in Doki Doki, Kafka, Himiko Toga, Azula, Xaden Ryerson, Lady Dimitrescu. Why is evil so hot? That is the question I pose to you today, and I promise it is a question with a deeper answer than it all started with Helga St. Clair in Atlantis. Because fictional characters are easy to admire. It's obvious why a character like Kratos is so well liked. He's tough, he's got a past, he has regrets, which makes him relatable, and it's because of his grit and stoic nature that when he shows kindness, those moments shine the most. A soundly written hero in fiction. Is this not the type of character we should obsess over? Why does Joe Goldberg perhaps get just as many flowers simply because Penn Badgley is good looking? Or is it that simple? Why have literal serial killers garnered fervid cult followings while Hollywood has always struggled to make folks truly love Superman? Why are villains these days so much more attractive than maybe they once were? Why do we often more easily forgive characters if they're attractive? What does it say about us if we do? I'm here to give my best answer to these questions. I've got some psych research, I've got some counterexamples, I've got several hear me outs and I can fix hers lined up to deeply analyze, and hopefully we can have some fun reaching a conclusion in the process. So if you'd like to get comfy and grab some popcorn, that would be perfect. While you do that, I'll knock out my sponsor read, and then we'll get salacious and giggle about hot villains. Do you remember the Pit of 100 Trials in Paper Mario? If you never played it, it was this super grueling gauntlet that invited you to not just fight the main battles, but to really flex your strategic chops against increasingly tough enemies. It was totally optional, of course, but super rewarding if you ever decided to take it on. It reminds me of the Training Grounds, a new feature Boot.Dev has devised that lets you grind infinite coding challenges before you move on to your next course. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What exactly is Boot.Dev? Well, if you like the challenge of turn-based RPGs and you've always been interested in learning to code, this is for you. Boot.Dev is probably the best way to learn back-end web development if you grew up a gamer because it formats courses using modern game design. Their philosophy is twofold. You can't learn if you get bored, and you can't get good at what you learn unless you're challenged. With Boot, you'll learn how to build real projects like you would on a job and forge your skills with real experience, as well as on-screen experience, achievements, quest completions, boss fights, even a leaderboard if it'll keep you motivated. If this is something you're interested in, go take the demo. It's free, and all content is free to watch and read in guest mode if you like to see what you're up against. Maybe this is for you. Maybe this could be the start of your career. The Pit of 100 Trials starts on the first floor. Will you rise to the challenge? If you're in, be sure to use my code DarylTalksGames at checkout to get 25% off your entire first year of the annual plan. Link in the description, QR code on screen. You can do this. A massive thanks to Boot.Dev for once again sponsoring the show. Now, let's get back to business. I want you to watch this very closely. Did you see that? That word was on the screen for 6 frames. In this video, running 60 frames per second, that's a tenth of a second, 100 milliseconds. That is how fast your brain can see a stranger's face and make a judgment about it. And this is critical to consider when we meet a stranger in fiction. When you see Aerith's face for the first time, there is a strong possibility that those big green eyes, the flowing hair, the soft skin blossoms into several unrelated character traits. Perhaps you infer based completely on appearance that she is kind and considerate. Heck, if you met someone this attractive in reality, you might do the same thing. This is due to something called the halo effect, which is when one nice trait about a stranger, because we don't know much about them, sort of fills in all the blanks and bleeds into your expectations of them. The halo effect has evidence across cultures. One study found that jurors were less likely to find an attractive person guilty of a crime. Others found that attractive people are typically rated as having more positive personality traits and higher intelligence. Studies in educational settings find that teachers tend to have higher expectations of students they found more attractive. Attractive students get better grades if they're in person and not taking classes online where the teacher never sees them. These are all real studies. And it's for these reasons that a person simply being nice to look at on screen is massively important to their part in the story. And on a subconscious level, I think we all understand this. At its simplest form, a character's appearance is how the audience can make a quick judgment. If someone looks like this, okay, they look nice. I think I'll root for them. If someone looks like this, that's sinister. I would not trust them around my kids. Ariel is skinny and glimmering. Ursula is obese and sickly. Luke is young and starry-eyed. Palpatine is an ashy old raisin. Is the classic evil wears black, good wears white. Stories aren't just told through dialogue and blocking. Because we only get so much time to spend with these characters and so much dialogue, how they look should also communicate something critical about them. Auron in Final Fantasy X, for example, is very mysterious early on, and to express that, you not only get his cryptic dialogue, but you also note that strange mannerism of leaving his arm inside his coat and hanging his hand out the front. Even if you don't know that this is a nod to the old Ronin tradition of hiding their non-dominant arm as an act of remorse over a previous dishonor, note how he doesn't have it hanging like this in flashbacks before things went down, and also how Itachi in Naruto does the same thing. But even if you don't get the reference, this little idiosyncrasy immediately adds something to your impression of him. It's nonverbal information and deepens the mystery of his character. Another worth mentioning is Kaine in NieR Replicant. Yes, she's pretty, and yes, she is, well, let's just say she is not doing the arm hang thing. But despite what you might initially think of what she looks like or what Weiss thinks,
speak the truth, Hussy.
Look.
Shut up.
Once you get a little deeper in the game, you realize that this isn't fan service. Kaine struggles deeply with gender identity, and I won't spoil exactly why this is, but the realization actually makes her outfit choice a tragic one. She is a person who desperately wants to be seen as feminine, and without her saying one word about it, you consider her appearance and it all becomes painfully clear. Character design is an unwritten language that helps tell the story you're enjoying, and when you consider it in the light of the halo effect, it's hard not to deny just how much it influences our perception of these fictional people. Which brings us back to the original question. Why make a villain so damn sensuous? And I think the answer, like the answer to Kaine's outfit, can sometimes simply be because the point is to make us judge too quickly. This is Ellen. Richard meets her on a train and is quickly smitten by her. She's beautiful in a way that you really don't expect people from the 1940s to be. Perfect hair, perfect lipstick, perfect eyebrows, perfect smile. In fact, most imagery in this film is perfect. This is Leave Her to Heaven, one of the very first Technicolor films that was specifically of the drama genre. Usually, color was reserved for fantasy or musicals, but Leave Her to Heaven used this color to make life with Ellen pop. Very early in the film, she and Richard are married, and it's through these gentle blues and reds that bring out the hue in Ellen's lips and eyes, and the warm fireplace lighting of their home, and the sweeping sunlit landscapes that we experience their time together.
I think I can feel safe in saying the job is permanent.
Thank you, sir. I always does my best.
All of these things serve the purpose of framing the portrait of a woman that is too perfect. Your first impression is that she's lovely, but as the narrative goes on, you can't ignore cracks in the canvas, like how she watches Richard sleep, how she reacts when Richard surprises her by inviting her family over for the weekend, how her loving gaze in moments of frustration mutates into a frigid, inhumane stare. I mean, just look at that glare and the immediate realization of it that follows. Gene Tierney is phenomenal in this film and does a fantastic job of trapping the audience in Ellen's web. Initially, we, like Richard, are enchanted by Ellen, but as time goes on, there is this dissonance that eats away at you until your first impression is proven desperately wrong.
Help me!
And this is probably the single greatest reason that a villain would be physically appealing. To subvert expectations and use the halo effect and all of those time-honored and unwritten character design rules and then use them against us. Leave Her to Heaven is far from the first or last to do this. We've seen it plenty of times over the years in small doses. In Beauty and the Beast, Gaston is this gorgeous hunk of a man that the whole town is in love with, and the Beast is, well, a beast. But the lesson is, of course, that someone's real worth is who they are on the inside, and that kindness wears many faces. In the long run, Gaston shows his true colors, as does Beast, effectively going against our initial judgment, which is the point, and only possible if these two look like they do.
Hiya.
If you saw the Chainsaw Man movie last fall, you'll know that Reze is a textbook femme fatale. She only captures Denji's imagination at first because she's so mischievously pretty and flirty. A few looks like this, and he's in love. Perhaps so are we, which of course plays right into her plan and leads to, well, we'll come back to that later. Snape in Harry Potter is a tremendous character to reference here. In Sorcerer's Stone, when Harry sees him for the first time, he's described as having greasy black hair, a hooked nose, and sallow skin. And in the movies, this description is pretty closely followed. Not to say that Alan Rickman was ugly, but, you know, he's no Glenn Powell. At a glance, he fits the shoes of a villain perfectly, and you and Harry can't help but think he's involved in most wrongdoings in the first few books. But again, as time goes on, he transforms from an old creepy weirdo into something else. His sinister acts turn out to be for a greater purpose. Snape wiggles into your heart and becomes this gut-wrenching character that you just feel the most emotions for, partially because you initially misjudged him, just like everyone else. But I opened this section with the film from the 40s to show that this is nothing new. This is not some trope that Hollywood and the anime industry and fiction writers and developers have recently discovered and are now obsessed with. There is something else going on as well. My wife recently started watching a show called Dawson's Creek, this old high school drama show from the late 90s. I asked how it was, and she said it was fine, but the refreshing part is how normal everyone looks. No one really looks like supermodels. They're all just normal people. Crooked teeth, imperfect faces. Hell, the kid that's sleeping with his teacher, spoilers, looks like this. And that's not to say he's fugly, but you know, he's no KJ Apa in Riverdale 20 years later in the exact same plot point and the exact same genre of TV. When you compare these casts, Dawson's Creek is filled with actors that look like people, Riverdale is full of people that look like actors. And this is a thing that many of us, and maybe even you, are starting to become aware of. There aren't exactly ugly actors anymore. Everyone is beautiful, even if they don't really need to be. I call this the Aunt May effect. Here is Aunt May when we were kids, this is Aunt May now. Why did they make her hot? So that Iron Man could flirt with her?
So hard for me to believe that she's someone's aunt.
And I guess I'm okay with actors being more attractive across the board if their appearance kind of doesn't matter to the plot, but if we loop back to earlier examples, again, a character's visage is still part of that unwritten language. This is one reason a lot of people are upset with the casting choice for Snape in the new Harry Potter. This man is gorgeous. I'm supposed to see that face and think he's untrustworthy and dangerous? Also, as an aside, if the intent by the directors is to give us that impression because he's black, that is a choice. But I'm sure it'll be fine. It's Harry Potter. That franchise has never had any controversy before. Have you noticed that Disney villains used to be sickly and green and purple and sinister looking, and now they're almost indistinguishable from other characters? Don't get me wrong, it feels like often this is because the plot demands that their identity as the villain be kept secret so that it can be a big reveal later. But I mean, I'm supposed to root against Michael B. Jordan's abs? I'm supposed to buy that this decrepit thing dangling from its own bones in 101 Dalmatians started out as Emma Stone? I know Monica systematically gaslit you and her friends, which led to their untimely demise, but have you considered that she's a pretty girl? Daemon Targaryen has a ton of blood on his hands and is toxic to his brother and grooms his own underage niece, but have you considered that he's Matt Smith? And herein lies one of the biggest roots in this garden weed. When everyone is alluring, everyone becomes redeemable, even if that is not the intended message. Maybe a character being ugly is critical to you dismissing them. Maybe a character being attractive shouldn't be something that is handed out without intent. And to be fair, again, sometimes them being bad and hot is the point, like with Joe, which we will come back to, but when you add a halo to everyone on screen, it can distract from their horns. My point is simply this. If nowadays the tool of appearance is being cast aside for blanket applied beauty, what does that do to our impression of these people when in the past, appearance has been critical to their character? What does it do to our expectations of them when the halo effect is always in play? If Snape had been described as sharp-jawed, muscular, and sporting a twinkle in his eye, that would echo into your entire perception and expectation of the character for the rest of the series. Every time you're supposed to empathize with Harry's suspicion, there's a possibility that instead you'd be defending him. Just as you might defend Ellen when she's a little sus, or Damon when he chokes his wife, or Makima when she uses her disturbing power, or Joe when he goes off the deep end for the 4th time this season. Now, we do need to add something acidic to cut the sweetness of this video. The script is long due for a counter-argument or 5. Many of you might be screaming, yeah, but these are fictional characters. We don't forgive real people for such horrible acts just because they're charming. And to that I'd say, who is we? Many people still love middle-aged actors despite them dating like 18-year-old girls. We still watch and cheer for professional athletes who have criminal records, as long as they're wearing the right colors. Society has a knack for making up excuses for people we admire and find alluring. even if they're a literal serial killer. Margaret Good, one of Ted Bundy's lawyers, said that when he was on trial, ladies would show up at court and pass her handwritten notes to give him. And that sure does mesh well with the findings I mentioned earlier about the halo effect and good-looking folks having a better shot in court. With all of his charisma and good looks, even on death row, Bundy still had women pining after him. Dr. Catherine Ramsland, a professor of forensic psychology at DeSales University, points out that his type of confidence and charisma attracts some types who like the edginess of a person who can plan and carry out violent acts. In their minds, they thought, he might kill other women, but he'd be good to me. I can fix them is nothing new or exclusive to fantasy. The halo effect is real, and there is an argument to be made that it is just as penetrating to our psyches in fiction as it is in reality. But I also think that to minimize this conversation to simple physical beauty is to oversimplify the issue, because rarely is it the case that a villain can just be beautiful and then everyone blindly follows them. Okay, maybe not rarely, but I think there is also something to be said about a bad guy simply being more interesting than a good guy. Isn't it sometimes oddly fun to watch a villain enjoy doing villain shit? Especially if they're charismatic in the process. We don't root for Heath Ledger's Joker, but oh my goodness, are we captivated by the performance. I think this is one reason that the anti-hero is sort of on the rise, while the old vanilla, morally upstanding American hero characters like Hulk Hogan and Optimus Prime and He-Man and Superman just don't get the same traction they used to. If you're a wrestling fan that watched during the Super Cena era back in like 2010, you got to watch people become bored of this character trope in real time. But the morally gray characters?
Chaotic good is my babe. They are messy, they make mistakes, they have good hearts, and they will break the rules for the right reason.
It's like the old Oscar Wilde quote, "It is absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious." And charm is certainly in the equation, but I think a critical block in this Jenga tower is that evil has a greater opportunity to change. There's more you can do with a morally gray character than a white meat babyface character. In a bubble, I think this can be illustrated really well in Dispatch. Without going into too many details to respect spoilers, your romance options for Robert are Blonde Blazer and Invisigal. Both are charming in their own ways, but despite Blazer being the stereotypically prettier and hotter character, when I played this, Vizzy was significantly the favorite for actually getting picked. And I think this is due entirely to the start of Chapter 4. No, to the simple fact that Invisigal has more room to grow. And the start of Chapter 4. Blazer is this famous hero who plays the role of leading the SDN and gets to be a good guy. But Invisigal has secrets. She is clearly a former villain, this is explained very early on, and as the plot progresses, you get to watch her gain confidence. You argue with her, she makes mistakes and is convinced she is not meant to be a hero, which you get to help her see isn't true.
It's in the fucking stars.
Fuck the stars. You want to save her from all this. She has potential for character growth, making her much more interesting, relatable, human, and engaging. Blazer stays pretty much the same. And it's not to say that she's poorly written at all. I've played both routes, I know the twist, but Vizzy needs fixing in some regard, and that makes for a character that is going to be a full saga to interact with. She's very much like Chuck Bass, who is not the main character of Gossip Girl in Season 1, but boy, you can make the argument that by the end of the show that he really is. In the first season, he does many terrible things. He tries to sexually assault someone, sleeps around, hires sex workers regularly, is a chronic asshole, goes after his best friend's girl, and then after the fallout, compares her to a horse.
You held a certain fascination when you were beautiful and untouched. But now you're like one of the Arabians my father used to own. Rode hard and put away wet.
God But despite these heinous and sometimes hilariously savage acts, as the show goes on, he really tries to be a good person. You learn more about his relationship with his father and how this broke him, how he himself understands how horrible he has been to the people around him, and how because of these deep regrets, he feels he doesn't deserve the love that Blair wants to give him, culminating in some of the most heart-shattering TV I've ever seen. Despite it being fucking Gossip Girl. What happened to me? He transforms from this entitled brat into a confident, well-spoken young man that you simply cannot help but root for, again, like Vizzy, because you want to see him overcome his darkness. It makes every mistake and regression ache all the deeper. It makes every little victory all the sweeter. And it's dynamics like these that make an attractive— whoa, what is he doing here? He should not be in this And it's dynamics like these that make an attractive character go from a simple pretty face to something that you can feel yourself full body investing in. There is empathy and relatability in this. How many of us have had dark, terrible thoughts deep down? Does seeing someone act on those thoughts make us feel better? If they can be forgiven, does that mean we can? If they don't deserve redemption, do we? We don't weirdly root for Joe just because he's charming and good looking. We root for him because in these moments, he's kind of justified. He doesn't do horrible things to the folks in Beck's life simply because he's a yandere or because he's trying to keep her all to himself, but also because they are actively making her life horrible. Benji, her on-again, off-again boyfriend, is extremely toxic and borderline abusive toward her. Her best friend Peach consistently gaslights and manipulates her. And you see Beck struggle to escape from their acrimony on her own.
It is exhausting being your friend.
Is Joe right to do what he does to them? No, but was his heart in the right place? Do those friends deserve what he did? Those are tougher questions to answer, and it makes him easier to defend. This show is a grand tug of war between pity and disgust for Joe Goldberg. Yes, he's wrong, but you can't help but get why he did what he did. And in moments, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to hate him, like this scene in Season 2 where mid-acupuncture, he breaks down. Memories of his childhood come rushing back. All at once, we discover a large piece of why he is so broken. What made him this way? And you see in his face that he just made the very same discovery. Tears flow, and suddenly, this demon becomes human again. But is that enough? When we find ourselves enchanted by these kind of characters, I think there are two possible endings that we have in mind for them. Either they are redeemed and our secret cheering for them pays off in a beautiful, vindicating way, or they double down and eventually cross a line that we cannot follow, at which point we want to see them defeated. Those are the two outcomes. And what I think we have really been talking about in this video is how we as an audience decide where that line is. Does the halo effect come into play? Yes. Can the narrative make us question where that line is because we understand why this person is broken? Absolutely. But at some point in the narrative, we have to decide on an ending for these characters. So when does someone become unforgivable? I'm going to talk about Chainsaw Man now. If you've never watched or read this series, Denji is our lead, but then he dies, but then he comes back as Chainsaw Man because his demon dog agreed to lend him part of his heart and his powers so long as Denji pursues his dreams. It is not a normal story, play along. Early on, Denji meets Makima, a kind-hearted, soft-spoken girl who gives him a place to live, friends to bunk with, a salary, and a job fighting devils. And he is infatuated with her. And, you know, we kind of are too. Again, she fits that charming first impression we've talked so much about. Yes, she is horrifyingly powerful and intimidating in moments, and she is, well, let's just say not afraid to motivate with her charm, but she's ultimately a force for good. Her goals of eliminating devils align with the whole cast. And if you saw the Reze Arc movie last fall, you will have seen one of my favorite scenes from the series, animated. Denji and Makima go on an all-day movie marathon. They go to theater after theater, watch film after film, and they all suck. Both of them agree.
That one sucked too.
I didn't think the story was believable.
But the very last film is so much the exception that we see Makima shed a tear, which is the first time we've really seen her be vulnerable. Sure, she's alluring and well-spoken, but she's chronically professional and every bit as equanimous as she is beautiful. She doesn't really crack under any circumstance. Yet, here she is, being like the rest of us. After the movie, Makima elegantly teases Denji some more, and all the anime-only people in the theater swoon. And me. I swoon a little bit too, that's not important. Denji is head over heels. Nothing can ruin his life right now. Makima is the girl for him, and that is all that—
Thanks for the flower.
Uh-oh. This is Reze, and she is also perfect for Denji. Though he tries to fight it at first, oh, she's just so fun to be around, and unlike Makima, she is bubbly and silly and looks at Denji like this. The theater swoons. And as a viewer, you follow a similar path as you did with Makima. You watch Denji slowly fall for her, and you get it. In some ways, this is more spontaneous and kinda less creepy. Reze is Denji's age, and Makima is— how old again? Like 24-ish? I don't know. But again, there are red flags. Why is she this forward? Does she have some ulterior motive? As whimsical as the pool scene is, as much as it gorgeously captures the spontaneity and freedom of that first time you really fall in love as a teenager, you can't ignore these eerie shots of a moth caught in a spider web. Your antenna goes up as Reze effortlessly defends herself against a thug. Chills race down your spine as later on, during their first kiss, it becomes clear what Reze truly is. Now this could be the point at which you decide as a viewer, okay, she has crossed the line. I am no longer rooting for her, I want her defeated. You've picked her ending. But to do so, you have to discard all of this, all of the warm moments she and Denji shared, all of the smiles and laughter and playing under the moonlight. If it was all an act, that should be easy. Fuck her. But if any of it was real, is it enough? The movie culminates in what I can only describe as the most dazzling and kaleidoscopic rendition of a city in Japan being totaled in fiction I've ever seen, as Denji and Reze go blow for blow. Kinda. Reze kicks his ass the whole time, he really just stays alive. But ultimately he outsmarts her, dragging her into the water where she can't explode anymore until they both pass out. When she wakes up on the beach, he's covered her up with his shirt, and she's shocked that he hasn't turned her in. Reze then tries to leave, but then Denji says,
"Want to run away together?" Look, I know I shouldn't still like you, but I do. You can tell yourself what we had was a lie, but some of it was real, like that swimming lesson.
Then you see this look on her face that broken characters make when they're surprised that someone forgives them. The look that we all desperately want for these morally gray anti-heroes to know that they can leave all the darkness behind, perhaps to prove to us that we are worthy of the same grace we want to give. And though Reze doesn't agree to run away with Denji here, she does in the final scene of the film. She doesn't board her train. She doesn't run away. She doesn't ignore Denji's plea to meet him at the cafe. A walk becomes a run, as all at once she realizes that running away with him is everything she could possibly want. But Makima has other plans. It's always a great twist when a hero becomes a villain or a vice versa, but the alleyway scene is a brilliant piece of cinema because in that moment, we get a double turn. By Reze deciding to go with Denji, she goes from this cruel femme fatale back to our first impression of her. Why didn't she kill Denji when they first met? Why did she wait so long? Was she the one actually caught in his web? All of these things come swelling to the surface as she is redeemed and yet tragically, instantly ended by Makima. We aren't swooning now. This is the face of evil. She becomes that sinister visage on the train, the cold-hearted killer, the grooming seductress, everything that we feared her to be. And yet we still love her for some reason. We all in unison take the oath and utter the immortal words,
Mama warned me about women like you. I was hoping she was right.
We buy the merch and look at the art and meme the memes and defend her. And to that you might say, who is we? I'll answer that. They're typing in the comments right now. I can smell that bastard. He also wrote this video. The Makima sympathizers still exist, and yes, sometimes it's not real, people do love to rage bait, but this doesn't cover everyone. I'm not proud of this, but I, literally knowing what happens in this volume of the manga, went out of my way to get it signed by her English voice actress. What the fuck does that say about me? I might be the problem, and I think it all roots back to this moment, that single teardrop in the theater. There's more to her story, right? She killed Reze not because Reze had a change of heart, but because Reze tried to kill Denji and is a dangerous fugitive, right? Makima is so fascinating and mysterious, and even once you learn about her true motivations in the manga, you can't really blame her intentions as much as you do her methods. It's fun to watch her be menacing, and yet there's still a crumb of humanity in there that makes her so enthralling that somehow this moment is not enough to make her unforgivable. For some of us, of course. But like Joe and like so many other irredeemable bad guys, I think it says more about the people still defending them than it does about how they are written. The zeitgeist right now is unquestionably a love for sympathetic villains, but that is a dangerous ledge to dance along. And I don't think anything illustrates this better than the way You ends. So yeah, I'm gonna tell you about a few moments from the last season, and it is by all definitions a major spoiler. But also, like, come on, just let me tell you, it will not ruin the show for you, and by the time you get to fucking season 5, you will have forgotten all of this. Plus, are you really gonna sit down right now and watch all 5 seasons of this, or are you just gonna go boot up Marvel Rivals again, you pathetic fucking... Okay, so in season 5, we find Joe in a completely different stage of life. He has a son now. He is married to a famous person, making him famous. But the marriage itself is struggling, and his latest obsession is this girl he finds breaking into his bookstore, a girl who introduces herself as Bronte. And Bronte is sort of a stand-in for us. Here's what I mean. She is there, we discover, because she and some other internet do-gooders know who Joe really is. They are convinced that they have him pegged for all of the terrible acts he has covered up. And ultimately, they catch him in the act, and you go, okay, they've got this guy, that's it. But Bronte, unfortunately, like many of us, finds herself caught in his web. See, she sort of had to go undercover as the other woman in order to get him into this compromising position, and she, very much by design, is brainwashed with the promise of a good man underneath all of that corruption. And just when you think they're going to put him away...
What Joe did wasn't murder. It was self-defense.
Bronte supports his plea, clearing him of the current charges. And in the final episode, you get this Bonnie and Clyde setup where both of them are running away to start a new life. But Bronte is second-guessing her choices. Can this curly-haired imp be forgiven? Will he really be different to her? This is what I mean by saying she's a stand-in for us, because the audience, after all this time, has wrestled with that very decision.
How do I give you the ending you deserve?
Do we want Joe's demise or his redemption? As the show has progressed, it has become significantly harder and harder to cheer for the latter. You get a ton of these Makima alleyway scenes along the way, so many of us watch this screaming for Bronte to wake up. So one evening, as she and Joe turn in for the night, she finally finds the conviction to pick her ending for this demon. It's a triumphant moment to see her finally, after all that time, watching her defend and excuse and pretend that Joe is anything other than her worst fears of what he might be, turn on him. This is a victory for all of the women that Joe has made suffer. The phone rings. It's Joe's son, Henry, and Bronte, being human, allows him to pick up. But the conversation is brief.
Do you remember when you used to tell me there were no monsters in my room?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
You lied. It was you. You're the monster.
The damage is done. Joe's sins catch up to him. The final nail in his coffin is his son of all people on the planet giving up on him. Joe is alone in the universe. This is not what he wanted or intended when Beck walked in his bookstore all those years ago. How could it come to this? He's not a bad guy. He just, all he ever wanted was love. Is he truly unlovable?
This is deluded. You're not the fucking victim.
And he's not. It's probably the most important line in the series. I love this scene because it's Joe's one final attempt at doing what he's so effortlessly done for 5 seasons. Trick you and the people around him into thinking that he can somehow be justified for all the blood on his hands. And seeing Bronte, our stand-in for the story, have conviction about Joe's fate is wildly cathartic. And I think it's no coincidence that Denji follows a similar path to Bronte. After all, even once Makima has done her worst, once Denji is wise to it all, he admits that he still likes her and recognizes that that is a problem. He's like some of us, perhaps, willing to forgive well past the point we should. But there is a strange innocence in being so willing to forgive, isn't there? When I was a child, my mother took me to Baptist church every single Sunday, and while I don't really do that anymore, I still sometimes think back to an interaction we had one Sunday. I asked her, "Mom, if the Bible says to pray for your enemies, shouldn't I pray for the devil?" And with a very conflicted and disturbed face, she told me, no. And to this day, she still hasn't given me a convincing reason why not. I still wanted to pray for Satan. Maybe if he and God could work it out, then, we could close hell and then all of us could go to heaven. The hypocrisy stung, eventually became unignorable, and at 9 years old, I had my first profound thought. Is my grace greater than that of the God who allegedly made me? And that's a deep fucking question for a kid, right? Like, I was obviously overlooking the fact that maybe Satan didn't want to be forgiven, and I'm surprised that I didn't get struck by lightning that day.
Smite me, almighty smiter!
But I think that question speaks to the heart of our discussion today, because while the intent on my part was pure, it was likely also very short-sighted. Is Denji admirable or pathetic for his ability to see the halo for the horns? Are we insane for feeling something akin to sorrow when the devil himself cries for what he has become? To have affection for the beast? And while it is tempting to assert that the answer lies in the intent of that affection, perhaps it lies in the object. Perhaps the distinction simply resides in the difference between wanting to see the human in spite of the evil and being seduced by the evil itself. In the closing moments of Joe's journey, we find him rotting in jail, internally lamenting his loneliness. But then, wouldn't you know it, some fan mail arrives. And in the final words of the series, we hear him think to himself, "Why am I in a cage when these crazies write me all the depraved things they want me to do to them? Maybe we have a problem as a society. Maybe we should fix what's broken within us."
Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you.
Oh my sweet goodness, this video was a juggernaut to write. Thank you so much for watching. This is my attempt at actually writing about non-video game things a little bit more regularly, so I hope this was okay. I spared you the section where I talked about wrestling fans turning on John Cena because they got tired of this type of character and the eventual overdue heel turn, and also how this plays into the new Superman movie and how it's a response to society that really only wants anti-heroes, and I didn't want this to be like 2 hours long. If you're an Eye Patch Wolf fan, pester the fuck out of John to get him to make that video because I want to watch it. Anyway, thanks for watching me ramble. I hope it was good for you. If you liked it, leave a like. If you want to subscribe, subscribe. If you have the hots for a villain, spill it in the comments. I want to hear you out. And if you want to support the show as well as get all kinds of bonus content like bloopers and editing streams and updates and creative input, come join me over on Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get all that and more. A huge thanks to this month's featured patrons: Nathan R. Jones, Blue Cater, Pinched Slinky, Trevor Owens, Mason the Yellow Snake, Kylan Larson, and Samuel Spence. Thanks again for watching. Take care, my friends, and have yourself a damn good one. Oh yeah, we're the problem.